half already.
Nice. Well,
Um,
that's always fun.
Did you have any comments about the last episodes or episode?
Honestly, I don't remember what we talked about. I think we talked about the Book of Aquarius, didn't we?
Yeah, and how they talked about creating the Philosopher Stone. I was just curious. I looked back a little bit, just to prepare for this episode. I want to say congrats. You're actually my first recurring guest on my podcast,
Pleasure.
and um, I'm glad you come back. So I was thinking we could start with maybe the mushroom and DMT experiences I had. That might tie into everything.
What
Um,
kind of DMT did you do?
it was the powdered stuff.
So the regular DMT, not 5-MeO, because 5-MeO is the toad, which is what
I'm
they
not sure
what
what
they.
it was made out of. I know it was just like a, golden powder looking.
Well, you just bought it off the internet and then just did it.
No, the guy actually got the mushrooms for had it.
Just some mysterious substance, bro.
I took my chances. He seemed trustworthy, like I said, since I had the mushrooms from him.
A trustworthy drug dealer.
Yeah, well, I had a friend. He was buying from him too, so he's the one that recommended them.
So what was that like? Because I've never done DMT. I've only ever done mushrooms, and that's pretty much it. I because DMT is like the pinnacle, right? The holy grail, if you will. That's the one that really blasts you into outer space. And I remember I was obsessed with psychedelics for a long time because what an interesting thing that some substance can quite literally, in my opinion, unlock what some people call like an alternate reality or an alternate dimension. And that's allegedly what they're doing now with mapping out this DMT scape. So I'm curious, how far did you get? Did you blast off? Did you take enough to break through, or like what was that like?
Definitely not enough to break through. My first one definitely had some hallucinations. I had put some in a pipe I had that I consumed cannabis with, and I remember looking down and it turned into like bugs, like the ash. Um, and then I had some cardboard boxes stacked on my sides of me, and it looked like that started to like liquefy and like run down. Um, I was outside when I did it, so I went inside, closed my eyes, and mostly just saw like colorful swirls and stuff. But the second time I did it, I was staring off at the trees, and it started to look like an outline of an elephant. So I think that came into play later on. But eventually I came back inside once I felt like it was starting to take effect. And I closed my eyes, covered up. And have you ever tried or can picture like the inside of a box filled with mirrors, but you can look into it? It looked like that, but you're staring into like the corner. So it kept like refracting, but like it stretched on. And I remember seeing like these tusk-like faces coming through. One was red and one was blue. They never said anything, never did anything. It was just these faces coming through this refractal mirror thing. It was pretty trippy.
But you were you were just chilling. You weren't looking into a box, but you saw a box, and then
Yeah, with my eyes closed, covered up, because I am somebody that has a inner monologue, and I can visualize stuff in my head. So with my eyes closed,
why do you say that
yeah,
you're somebody who has
that's what
an
I
inner
saw.
monologue?
Say again?
Would you say that you're somebody who has an inner monologue?
Yeah, because there's that debate about people who they don't hear inner voice or that they can't picture things, visualize in their head. So
I've
I'm
never
somebody
actually
that
met
can,
I've never actually met anybody who can't. Like I'm curious
if it's a real
if
thing.
yeah, I'm sure it is a real thing because there are levels of visualization that some people have. There's like a scale from like 1 to 5, and some people can see, like, if you think of an apple, they can see the outline of an apple, and then other people, they can't see the color red, but they can see the apple, the outline, and then there's other people on the opposite spectrum where they can see a fully detailed apple, and then there's the people in the center who could probably get somewhat of a decent apple, but not all the way through. But I think that's just like one of those things of like, how would you even come to measure that? Because really, when it comes to the mind's eye, you can picture quite, in my opinion, you could picture anything, right? You can make anything up. So I
Mhm.
can tell you, like, yeah, I can see the apple when I'm really not. You get what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah, you
kind of
can't
like
see inside somebody else's head, so how can you really prove it?
exactly. So that's why I'd be curious if anyone listening, if they've ever, if they don't have an inner monologue, and now I don't know if that's indicative of being conscious or not conscious. Like I'm not saying because a lot of people like to talk about NPCs and things of that nature of people who
Mhm.
are here just for texture. Have you ever seen your neighbors haul in their groceries? Like I've never seen my neighbors haul in their groceries.
I actually have.
I've never seen that, so I don't know if my neighbors are NPCs or here for texture. As soon as they walk into their houses, they just stand at their door and then just wait like
Mhm.
till the next day or a
Yeah,
few
I've
hours
actually
to.
talked to my neighbors. He has some, well, at least the one on the one side, he has grapefruit. He says we can go and get them whenever they come in.
He's one of the real ones.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I just finished doing a breakdown of the Truman Show where, everyone on that set is essentially an actor, right? And they all have their little cycle that they go through, and it gets to the part where Truman is like, "Hey, watch, watch, we're gonna see the lady with the dog, the car with the crushed, quarter panel, and then something else, some guy with like a red shirt or something like that." And then lo and behold, since he is on a movie set, and it's interesting because that syndrome, the Truman Show syndrome, is an actual thing that some psychologists have talked about where there are people, and I mean, there's all kinds of people, but there are people who they believe that their life is a movie, like a legitimate movie, like the Truman Show. And what's interesting about that is that you've had people, this one guy, Joshua Cook, in 2003, I think it was, where he actually slaughtered his whole family because he thought he was in the Matrix and that he was a part of the Matrix and that they were out to get him. And
Hmm.
that was a defense that they used in court to try to get, I think they were trying to get him off on insanity. Because if you think about that, like somebody would have to be insane enough, right? Looking at it from an outside perspective, because you can't, how you're saying, you can't see into somebody's head.
Yeah.
You can't see what they're doing. You can't tell what they're thinking. But if you think about that concept of like somebody would go to the depths enough to believe that they're in this Matrix movie, he dressed up with like the leather jacket and everything, had a shotgun, and I think he killed all of his family or everyone except his sister or something like that. But the Matrix defense is a real thing, bro. So there are people who essentially are living in another reality, even if that is their own reality, right? And nobody else can take that away from them
Hmm.
because it gets into the realm of like aliens and stuff. And are substances like DMT or mushrooms a way to communicate with another dimension? Or because it feels like a lot of the times, whenever I hear somebody talk about DMT or any psychedelic and they have like this epiphany or breakthrough, it feels like they never really bring back any information of substance that would like if hey the DMT elves told me how to solve the they gave me the answer to the double slit experiment and I can prove it to you. Here it is. Like they never come back with like any actual information. You get what I'm saying? Like they never come back
Hmm.
like, hey, I learned how to solve this or that. It's always very vague and like they couldn't understand what was being said to them. And I've had plenty of friends of mine who have done ayahuasca, and ayahuasca is another one that has the DMT in it, and that's a longer line. Those you're tripping for hours, like for hours and hours, 6, 8 hours, and they're in this other dimension. I've had friends of mine tell me that they've had entities come and visit them, things that they couldn't explain. And a lot of it reminds me of like you see the different depictions of different gods and how they kind of sort of, and this is a bad word for it, but they look demonic, like they're monsters. You see Shiva and all the multi-arm with like a crazy looking face and all that. And a lot of my friends, or one of my friends, described these entities that he saw kind of sort of like this, like very grotesque and ugly and demonic looking, but that he didn't feel that they were out to get him, to harm him. Right? Because if you see something like that, if you see something out of like a Cthulhu or Lovecraft story, you'd be terrified. And he says that he didn't, that he it just was like curious to see him. And then it would just he said that he was in this tent and that would kind of sort of come in through the wall of the tent
Hmm.
and like peek inside and then dip back out. To me, that sounds terrifying. I can't even imagine seeing something like that and then just going about my day. You know what I'm saying? Like that's sounds super scary to me.
And definitely something I reflected on for at least the day after. But that kind of reminds me of what I saw, like the kind of like a Hindu or like a Japanese kind of like demon mask when they had the
Mm-hmm.
tusks coming up and down. Um, but yeah, they were just there. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel, excitement or anything. They never said anything to me. It's just like that's what was starting to kind of come through in all the different shapes I kept seeing.
And it just makes me think of how many world religions are based off of, a psychedelic trip or something. Because, and that's why I was fascinated with it for so long until I actually did try mushrooms for the first time and last time ever. I did actually go through the process to harvest my own, and I studied a little bit of mycology, and I just learned everything about the process of like how to get them and everything, and when they
Mhm.
were ready to be picked, then you had to dry them out. How would you know if it was or wasn't contaminated? And shout out to Reddit, because Reddit is super helpful when you want to do stuff like that, because there's a community of people who want to help you,
Mhm.
and you can just like post pictures and they'll be like, yeah, no, that looks good, or hey, give it more time or whatever it is, or like watch out for this or watch out for that. And I actually had some guy who had messaged me, and he was kind of my mentor for a long time, but he kept asking me for MDMA to like send him some, and I'm like, bro, I don't, I'm just growing this. And then it felt like, looking back at it, because I never heard from him ever again. Either he got popped by the police or something, or he was a fed like trying to get me to send him some stuff so that they could like, get
Mhm.
me. But he was super helpful with everything else. Like he knew a whole bunch of stuff about like, hey, this strain does this strain does that, and he walked me through the whole thing. So if he was some agent on the other side or not, I don't know. But I had a really bad mushroom trip the first time I ever did it, because I did it at the peak of 2020 when the world was ending, and
That's
I had
about
like
when I did it, about July 2020, my first mushroom.
yeah, and I had like a lot of anxiety. It was really really bad. It felt like I was gonna die. And I tried watching various things, and I tried watching Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan was on with Brian Callen, and Rogan had like black eyes, like dark black eyes, and then Brian Callen looked like Baphomet. You ever seen like Baphomet, the picture of Baphomet?
I think so.
Yeah, he looked like a like this donkey-headed demon with like six eyes. It was like the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And I had to turn it off because obviously, you're alone at night, tripping your balls off. You don't want to see demons, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I was seeing. I was seeing demons, dude. It was the craziest thing.
Yeah. When I had mine, I was coming off of working at FedEx doing like crazy hours. We would go in from like 1:30 to 2 and work till like 10:30 in the morning. And not even get half of like the trailers done. So I had left. And when I did mine, I had started early, but by the time it was, like 4 o'clock, I had spent like so many hours just laying there with my eyes closed because I was physically tired, but my mind was still racing. It wanted to go up, get up and go. So I spent a lot of time just laying there with my eyes closed. Um, and for
Do you know how much you took?
it was just like a couple little bits of mushrooms, so not a whole lot.
You didn't weigh it?
No, I think they say it was like an eighth or eighth of a, little eighth. I don't know how much it was. It wasn't like massive amounts. Um, So what I came to after I was all done with that was like I did kind of feel like you brought up Truman, like not that people were watching me, but I was kind of like just watching my life go on. 'Cause I was somebody that kept telling myself like, oh, someday I'll do this, someday I'll do that, and it all work out without actually putting any work in. So that was a big wake up call for me to take more control of my life and not just watch it go by.
Wait, so you felt that what that you could like
That
manifest things?
no, just that through the whole experience, I just kept thinking of like fantastic scenarios just to kind of keep my mind busy, and I got just so tired of laying there doing that. I came to the realization that I feel like that was kind of like most of my life. I've been a daydreamer a lot and just watching it go by without actively going down the routes I want to do. I was just telling myself one day I'll get it done, one day I'll do it, one day it'll happen.
I think we've all been in that position where like because getting out of eh, reality in life is so weird and psychedelic that when you're put in a position where you have to figure out what you have to like what you want to do for the rest of your life,
Hmm.
right? Like finding something to sustain you and your family, and like there's people depending on you and everything like that. That's overwhelming, man. And I'm only 30 years old, and it's funny because a lot of the old heads, right, like people in my dad's generation, that realistically speaking, they had it a lot easier than we've had it in this day and age. Jobs were different. Back then it was like, hey, you could secure a contract with a handshake, right? A man's word. And like now that doesn't really exist anymore because everything has sort of been almost not monopolized, but there are a lot of gatekeepers in this world and any business that you're into. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of nepotism and there's a lot of like, hey, my buddy is buddies with this person, so he gets a more favorable route or something, right? Like
Hmm.
it's all about who you know in this day and age. So it's a lot harder, in my opinion, to really make any way in any industry that you get into. That's the way I see it. Um, so it's funny seeing a lot of these having that pressure of like an older person, like, oh, you just got to work more. It's like, bro, we are working. We're working more than ever, and it feels like we're making less progress versus the older person in 1994, the year that I was born, was already my dad always would always rub in my face like at your age, when I was like 18, at your age I had, two trucks, uh, 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 two cars and a house already at that age. Like, what do you have to show for it? It's like, damn, bro, things are a lot harder nowadays than they were back then.
Hmm.
That's just the reality of it with
Yeah,
inflation and with
inflation
everything else.
and all that just over the decades.
And I'm not giving excuses. I'm just saying that's being real.
Yeah,
Like that's
it's
the way it
definitely a
is.
struggle if you're starting from the bottom.
And a lot of the people who succeed, they usually have again a leg up from somebody in their family who helped them out. It's funny watching on YouTube like these young entrepreneurs, and it's like, yeah, either that or daddy gave you, $1 million to start your first business. Yeah, it must have been very hard for you, right? And it's like they can just not I'm not knocking that because it is a lot of work to take something and make something of it because you can receive $1 million and you could do absolutely nothing with it, right? You can flop. So I hats off to the people who have this hustler mentality who can keep grinding and grinding, but it is a lot of pressure, especially being a man in a society where at least when I was growing up, the man would be the sole provider of like the family, right? Nowadays
Yeah.
it's different because women work too. Nothing wrong with that, right? I think it's important to do something with your mind. Um and not so much in the way that you were talking about of like, hey, I'm gonna dream about it. I'm just gonna stay dreaming about it. Because a lot of the times if you do that, life will get away from you. And by the time you blink, you're like, oh damn, I'm already 30 years old. You know, what the hell have I been doing? And sometimes there's some days that go by where I'm like, man, I wish I could have gone to school. for architecture or for something like something different. And then when you look up like how long would it take to become an architecture? In Florida, it's like 7 years, right? So you got to go to school for four, then you got to go work somewhere for X time. It's like, damn, do I have 7 years to dedicate to like pivot in my career for something new? You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So it's like, all right, then I'm just gonna stay in this lane and just continue what I'm doing, and then just try and better myself doing what I'm doing. So I mean, living life, bro, is and again, I'm not saying this to like make excuses, but it's difficult, man. Being being a person can be difficult, right? And
Hmm.
at least we're fortunate enough that we can afford an internet connection, we can afford equipment and stuff like that, because there are a lot of places that, dude, I mean, I look at videos of like people who are in war-torn countries. Can you imagine that reality every day?
No, I don't know if I can. Just have bombs dropping while they're trying to go to the store.
That's wild, dude.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy, and to always be in this heightened state of anxiety and alertness. That can't be good for the body. You know what I'm saying? So I think again, being in the States and everything, we've got a lot better than a lot of people do. But I agree with you, man. Sometimes you got to wake up and smell the coffee and just get to it, I guess.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say like I was trying to manifest. It's just, you think about what you want to do, and it's like, oh, if I had the time, the money, etc., and you kick the can down the road. And
But
like you
some
said, you
people do
can.
that, and that's the thing about the occult, right? Because like I don't know if you've ever read. I just did an episode on Dr. Joseph Lashusky and Israel Regardie, The Alchemical Arts Brought Down to Earth. Have you ever read that book? Do you know who Dr. Lashusky is?
No, I don't think so.
So Dr. Joseph Lashusky was this occultist professor guy who he was known for allegedly manifesting a demon to like physical form. Like that's what he was known for, right? Like this, like
Hmm.
he wrote about and all this stuff. But he was in this alchemical school with Freda Albertus and Israel Regardie, which Israel Regardie was the guy who was the secretary for a lot of years for Crowley, or for like 7 years, I think. And he was also the guy who kind of sort of exposed the OTO, right? He had posted their papers and exposed them, and they got angry at him because he revealed too much, right? But this guy, Lashusky, talks about it even in, people that he knew in the circles of like the esoteric and the occult, where if you think about it, right, magic and the esoteric is about essentially obtaining powers, right? It's like, oh, you can obtain powers and control reality. But like, does it really truly work? Because if you could do that, then that'd be like a shortcut. And I think a lot of people see magic as that, like a shortcut to get ahead in life, but usually they're losers, right? And it just makes me think of like, if magic and the occult were real and people who practice it, do you think that maybe they'd be a little bit better off? Like, using Crowley as an example, he died penniless, being a guy who had inherited an amount of money at the time that was a lot. If you pull the numbers, it was like $1.7 million in the early 1900s, which is a lot of money for that time, right? And
Hmm.
$1.7 million today is a lot of money for a lot of people. And even then, he blew it all away. And he was a guy who was steeped into the occult. So you don't think he would have figured out, being a guy who didn't have to work, who all he could do was just dedicate his life to the occult or whatever it is. Don't you think he would have figured out a loophole to reality? Or like these alchemists that spend their entire life studying on how to turn lead into gold. Like that's all they did day in and day out, like try to figure this out. Did some figure it out? I mean, some people said they did figure it out, like Nicholas Flamel, and allegedly they helped build a lot of children hospitals and things like that. But it's like, little and few between the people who actually figure it out. If you want to believe the legends that they did actually figure it out,
Hmm.
you know what I'm saying? So like a lot of people will take that and be like, okay, I'm gonna hack the matrix, I'm gonna hack reality, and I'm gonna manifest XYZ. So that's why I asked you if you were like, oh, I'm just gonna concentrate long enough on here and I'm gonna manifest this. new reality, and then I'm just gonna go live in it. And I don't think it's oh it's I know for a fact it's not that simple. It's like it takes a lot. It
Yeah,
takes
no, it's
actual
not.
work.
Um, shoot, I had a. Oh, speaking of, it came back to me. Well, I like to think that somebody like Crowley, what if at the end, people came in and like ransacked him. They knew he had valuable, artifacts of books and stuff, and other people swooped in and got it.
What did they? I don't know if they did. I know they did
No,
for
I
John
just you,
D.
you had said he died like penniless, and so
Oh, because he
I'm
was a drug
saying,
addict, bro.
oh, was he? I
Yeah,
don't
he
know
was a
too
drug
much
addict.
other than what I've heard so far in different
Yeah. Some
podcasts.
people will tell you that he didn't die penniless or whatever. But a lot of people use that example of like, hey, look at this guy who died by himself, overdosing on drugs. And the thing was like even other guys like Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall, the reason that he was able to write the amount of books that he was able to write was because he had money left to him from two oil heiresses. So it was two sisters, two women that took a liking to him, and when they had they were from oil money, and when they passed on, they left him a an allowance, which was the equivalent to like $200,000 a year, till late into the 90s.
Hmm.
He was receiving this money. So you're a young guy in your 20s, and you're receiving $200,000 a year just from two random sugar mamas essentially. So you go travel the world and you go learn the secrets of the secrets and you start writing about it. But really, I mean, they were always strapped, the PRS was always strapped for cash for a long time. And even after Manly P. Hall had passed, they were selling some of his original copies of certain books to keep the place going. So it just comes to show us like, hey, if this dude literally studied for a living, Rene Descartes was another one. He came from a super wealthy family. They left him a ton of land, a ton of money, and in his entire life, he just spent it. He would he would join the army, like not the equivalent of the army at that time, because he was bored. He just wanted to go to battle. He had like a sword, so he was like LARPing, like
Yeah.
some rich kid with his what they call the valet. Like he had a whole bunch of people that would take care of him and stuff like that. He would just go and then just travel the world and study. And that's how he was able to allegedly come up with the Cartesian coordinate system and do all this other stuff. And he was a part of what some people speculate was, yeah, I don't know if he was a part of the Rosicrucians or he was a part of another secret society, but he was talking to people who were a part of said groups, allegedly, right? Like there was this group called the Invisibles, which was like this group of mathematicians that allegedly had figured out the esoteric side of mathematics. And Descartes said at one point, it's like if you understand mathematics, you're able to understand the deeper meaning of reality, which I think that's true to a certain extent. But again, we're talking about guys who dedicated their entire lives to just studying. And at least for Descartes, he figured something out that is still in use today. But a lot of other occultists, they just never did anything. And Joseph Leszewski in this book talks about that. Like, I wish I would. There were some guys that were saying like, I wish I would have rather focused on making money than trying to find the Philosopher's Stone or create a homunculus. This guy said he created a homunculus in the 80s, bro. You got to read that book.
I think that one from Israel, I think you had recommended the last time. I gotten some pages into it, but I didn't get around to completing it.
Yeah, I think that's the one, the alchemical arts brought down to. I just did an occult book club on it that'll be out soon, where we uncover the real recipe allegedly on how to create the the homunculus, and he was using the golden chain of Homer, that text that allegedly shows you how to create the gur, which is this earth, and then you're supposed to impregnate that. And from that, there are certain calculations of what you got to do. There's a certain amount of degrees and all that that you have to put it to allegedly, what he said, created a homunculus.
Hmm.
But he couldn't take pictures of it because his camera wouldn't focus on it. So did he do it or not?
Yeah, it
I don't
seems
know.
like that's always the excuse. It was too blurry.
Yeah, it was too, yeah, exactly. It was too blurry. He's like, yeah, I couldn't really get it to focus, so I just drew it instead. Um, Kind of like source trust me, bro. And it seems like a lot of stuff throughout history is a lot of it is source trust me, bro. Sometimes, like
Yeah,
any
everyone quoting each other. They all quoting
yeah, any
themselves.
major world religion, if you look at it, is source trust me, bro. And you just got to take it for what it is. And there's people who follow these texts to their deaths, bro. You know,
Yeah, I
so
think that in certain points of history, it was a lot easier to couch surf and say you're going to produce something and not do it. You
yeah,
can't
because you
really do
didn't
that
have the
these
IRS
days.
behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or like a mortgage payment. I mean, I'm sure there was payments and things back then too, but I can imagine it being a lot easier. And back then, in my opinion, it was probably more about like which family you were a part of. So if you were a part of like a wealthy family, you'd have better opportunities. Not saying that
Mm,
a lot of people probably did make it out and got lucky. You know, there were the pioneers of X, Y, Z and industry, right? Or
yeah.
they invented something and then that took off. And I think nowadays to invent something is a lot harder than it was back then, right?
Yeah, because of patents, I would imagine, and all of that.
Patents and
People are going to
yeah,
claim you stepped on their toes.
patents and a lot of things. Like, could you imagine creating something new, like something? If you think of the concept, for example, like Uber or Lyft, that's a pretty simple concept. Like, if you think of at the core of it, you make an app, you get a network together, and then you just make money off the fees that you charge people for using your network. You don't have to use Uber or Lyft, but if you do, the companies take a cut of the person's car that they're using. And so, in theory, you go, damn, that's a really simple idea. Anyone could have really done that, but you did it. It was another person that did it,
Mhm.
right? So, I always think about that. It's like, what could you possibly create that would change the world? And I'm sure there are other little stuff that you could create, but really think about something that you could get off the ground that everyone would use that would just propel you to being successful, you know, monetarily or
Mhm.
any other way. Which I'm not saying that gaining a lot of money is the key to happiness, because I know a lot of people who have money who aren't happy. I think that in life, I think a purpose is more important than anything. Like finding your purpose and being fulfilled, because a lot of people aren't being fulfilled,
Mhm.
whether it's what they're doing or whatever it is. And a lot of people just look for that. But at the same time of having to look for that, you're stuck in this dead end job or whatever it is, right? And you just get in that hamster wheel and you don't have a chance to break free. And I think that's the problem with society nowadays, where people are forced to work crazy amount of hours, work two or three jobs to make ends meet. And I think that's part of like the conspiracy, if you will, where they want to make you into a working class, because a guy who is always working doesn't have time to sit and reflect and think and innovate, right?
Mhm.
Because you're too busy trying to survive. You're always in fight or flight, so you're not going to sit there and think about ponder about reality or life or you know, what is truth or what is evil or what, you know, you don't have time for that. It's like, hey, I gotta be at work at, you know, 8:30 in the morning. I'll see you guys tomorrow, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that comes into play with two of the topics I wrote down. Is that I've never actually read or watched the movie The Hitchhiker's Guide to a Galaxy, but I saw
I
some post a few years back that was saying that if you do some kind of like numerology, you could do say that the 42 meant death, and after thinking a while, I feel like that does kind of make sense when you look at it through like cycles. To live, you have to kind of like die, and you
mm,
and that got me thinking once I heard one of your old episodes talking about the forever moment. I think that plays into that every day it's the same thing, just trying to survive or make it through the day. And our ancestors had a lot harder time at that, just surviving. You know, you had to get up, go get the food, the water, try not to die from, almost anything. and we live in a
That's
much
crazy,
more,
right?
yeah,
I
that
think
you could just,
reality is like a Dark Souls game where everything wants to kill you.
mhm.
Like nothing is nice to you. Everything wants to kill you. And you said the what the forever moment? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it was I think it was a concept that you were talking about. What is it? Not nihilists, but there was some ancient philosophy that every
Oh,
day
the
it's the
eternal
forever
now.
moment. Yeah, the for internal now. I have it written down as forever moment.
That's that's Nietzsche, I think. That's who
Mhm.
said that. The eternal now or the eternal return where everything is philosophical concept which states that time repeats itself in an infinite loop and that exactly the same events will continue to occur in exactly the same way over and over again for eternity. Yeah, Nietzsche talked about it in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, in which the protagonist learns to overcome this horror of the thought of eternal return. It is not known whether Nietzsche believed in the literal truth of eternal return or if he did not, and what he intended to demonstrate by it. And that's something that even right we think about because not only do you have to live reality as a person, a human being, but what religion does is like, hey, not only do you have to account for what you have here in reality in real life, but you also have to keep track of what you do in this reality to make sure that when you do pass on, you make it to heaven or Shambhala or wherever it is that you're going after the fact. And that, in my opinion, I mean, that just adds another layer of like, damn, this kind of sucks, right? Because you have
Mhm.
to keep your day to day life and keep up with everything. Plus, like, you have to appease God. And that's why I reject religion as far as like the organized religion. I believe in God, right? And as long as you're a good person, and if you want to follow the Ten Commandments, because the Ten Commandments at the end of the day, it's like, hey, don't be a piece of garbage. Be a good person. Like this is the way to live ideally. Read the Ten Commandments. They're like they are logical things, common sense.
Mhm.
Love your mom, love your dad. Don't kill people. Don't lust over your neighbor's wife. Right? Like things like that. Like don't tempt God or whatever all the other ones are. But it's like that's why some people align with religion because it gives them a framework in which to operate. Because some people are striving, how I said earlier, for purpose or some
Mhm.
structure to their reality. So they latch on to religion, but even within religion, you have various extremes of different beliefs and thoughts. And then you can, that's what a cult is. I mean, and I'm not saying that religion is a cult, but think about it. Like I laugh at the idea that in the Bible, you know, you accept Jesus Christ in your heart as your Lord and Savior and you're saved. And yet they found there's 45,000 different denominations of a book. There's 45,000 different ways to interpret something. How the hell am I supposed to figure it out? Am I supposed to learn about all the 45,000 different ways to interpret the book? Like, what am I supposed to do as a person, as a human being, right? Trying to navigate
Mhm.
reality. How am I supposed to come together when the people within the religion can't even come together on themselves, right?
Yeah.
So, and sometimes it might be the craziest, like it might be something subtle, like, oh, you know, in this book they meant this, and this other denomination says no, in this book they meant this. All right, there, boom, you have a split, you have a schism. They go on their separate ways. These people teach it this way, these people teach it that way. But which is the right one? How are you supposed to know which is the right one?
Yeah, I
And
want to
that's
say,
something that always bothered me, even growing up.
mhm. Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think that's why people fall away from church. Sometimes they have too many questions that can't be answered. But I was gonna say, I think it was the confessionals I heard it on that there's a book mentioned that Jesus read in his worship that's not even in the Bible today. So that's why, how do you know it's the complete story from the right angle?
Dude, that's something that I always battle with. you know, every day. Like how much of this is all real? How much of it is, a form of if in modern day humans, a person, George Lucas, can come up with an entire pantheon, an entire universe, an entire reality. It's the Star Wars universe, right? There's an entire lore behind everything. There are different characters. Wouldn't somebody back then who had a lot more time than we do today be able to do the same? Wouldn't they be able to come up with a crazy elaborate story? That's what any cosmology or any story of creation is. Every religion has a similar creation story. This god brought the sun into existence, then the moon, and this other version they chopped up a dragon and that became the different continents or whatever it is, and we have the blood of that dragon became the oceans. That's a story of, again, trying to explain what was probably already there. And they're like, hey, I wonder how the hell we got these mountains, or I wonder how we got this water. It's like, well, who do we worship? Or we worship Zarathustra or somebody, whatever it is. And, he slayed a cosmic bull. And then from that came reality. It's like, how do we know we got the right ones? Like, how do we know this is like 100%? And to think, and I know I'm not a theologian, and there's people who spend their entire lifetimes researching these sort of topics, and I'm sure that they have their ways of checking things and all this other stuff. But it's very easy to get into like an apologetics point of view where it's like even di- to the point where you disregard the evidence, and just because you have faith in something, you disregard that evidence. And it's like, oh no, this is the truth, which there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't force it on other people, right? If you want to live that reality, that's on you. Don't push it on other people, which is what organized religion has done. It's like, we know the way, this is it. And bro, like even Martin Luther was like, hey, listen, this might be all wrong. He put the paper on the door, he nailed it to the door, and then from there everything broke apart. And it's like there's so many different ways to interpret things that it kind of does feel like an eternal return and endless loop of ideas and cosmologies. And I think reality itself is some sort of like thought experiment. And it's like, how far can you get? So again, I don't reject God. I believe that there's a higher power, but I'm a skeptic, bro. Like that's just the way I look at things. I don't want somebody telling me how to interpret something, right? I want to be able to interpret it for myself. And I think
Mhm.
that religion itself is a brokered experience. You can only get to God through us. And hey, we'll put in a good word for you. Make sure you give your tithings every week. And if you don't, you're going to hell, right? So how are you going to compete with like this omnipresent thing that is constantly watching you and striking fear into you? Like there's no winning, right? And that's why I
Mhm.
said that it's difficult to be a human being and then navigate the spiritual. Or you have the mundane and then you have the spiritual. And you got to have a balance of both. Which I'm again, just be a good person, bro. Don't steal, don't kill people, follow the laws of society. If there's a stop sign somewhere, don't blow past the stop sign because it's probably there for a reason because there's other people on the road, right? Because some people are like, oh, stop signs are just another way to control you. Like, you have the people who just like the government is just there to to kill you, to end you all the time. I don't think it's like that. If it was up to me, I'd rather have less government, but you need order,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
there should be a balance. So I don't want the government being more intrusive into my life, but at the same time, they need to be there to keep order, right? I don't like paying taxes. I think taxes are theft. But hey, they say that my taxes go to fixing the roads and go to the schools. I can't prove to you that they do. But guess what? If I don't pay my property taxes, the law says that they're gonna, auction off my property. So you're forced into that hole of like, here, now I gotta pay it because the law says XYZ. You got what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So you kind of sort of have to fall in line. But I think that as long as you're conscious of what's going on, I think you're better off than the person that just blindly follows and like questions nothing and just does everything that they're told. You get what I'm saying? Like, am I
Yeah,
making any sense?
not to get too into, but yeah, kind of like the sheeple aspect of it. People get stuck in certain ruts, and they just go along with it.
Oh, yeah, some people want more government.
Hmm.
Some people want the government to be under their bed every night, tucking them in. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, I'm cool with the government. I'm just not cool with some of the stuff they do.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, coming back to survival, I think a lot of people just want life on easy mode. They want somebody there to take care of them, tell them when to go to bed, when to brush your teeth, make sure there's food
Which
in the
would be
mornings.
cool if people in society actually dedicated their free time to something constructive. But a lot of people in society nowadays, they just want to sort of, some people smoke weed all day and just do nothing and just be on, how you say couch surf and just stay there and not contribute anything. Even at least being a podcaster, I consider us like the modern day philosophers, right? Because we're speaking about, well, at least in the podcast that I do, we're speaking about life, about reality, about mythology, and contemplating and trying to find more to it, like the deeper meaning. And there are podcasts that are just people talking shit, which is cool too. It's another form of entertainment. I'm sure that they had comedians back then too doing the same thing to entertain the masses. But if you just want to sit at home all day and just live off the government doing nothing and not bettering yourself spiritually or intellectually, then I'm not with that. You
Mhm.
get what I'm saying? Like I don't think that's right. Because then we're footing the bill with the taxes that they take out of our paychecks every week, which is a lot of money. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
just to fund
Like,
somebody else.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's just like I think that things are still going to be the same for a long time until people start coming together. I think things will change, but I don't have all the answers to how to solve society's problems, right? I'm not,
Yeah,
but I would like the concept of like Plato's Republic, where only a select few people who have no interest in society run society. So the way that he put it is these philosopher kings, they didn't have any money, they didn't have any family, they didn't have any interest in society. Those are the people who were kind of set apart to run society and reality itself, right? And that's a good way because if you look at a lot of these politicians, earning $200,000 a year, but yet their net worths are like 150 million. How does that, how does that make sense?
yeah, the math isn't mathing.
Yeah, like, how does that make sense? Like Nancy Pelosi, one of the best stock traders of like all time. What? Like you see it, like the corruption, you see it blatantly, but nothing ever happens, right? And it goes again back to what I was talking about earlier. It's a series of gatekeepers and people in these groups that are helping each other out on the dime of the taxpayer, on the dime of somebody else. And meanwhile, they're getting rich and stockpiling their riches, and here we are slaving away every single day trying to make it by. And I I don't know what it's gonna take for people to wake up. There's more of us than there are of them. I'm not saying like overthrow the government or anything, but hey, that's how the United States was founded, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of people need to kind of take the reins and do more to make life better. Um, One of the thoughts you had mentioned in an old episode that you came out of your mushroom trip thinking that humanity was a virus. I see it a bit more like a cancer, like we've been talking about. When you lose your purpose, you can just grow rapidly out of control, trying to suck up all the nutrients and kill out all the other stuff and become problems,
Oh
gum up
yeah,
the system.
100%, dude. And that's like one of the things I learned about. That was like the epiphany that I had when I was on that trip because the the one thing that did it for me was the elephant seals that have to climb up further and further to find cold, but it's a two-ton animal going up a mountain and there's so many of them trying to find the colder air that they would fall down and they would die. So I'm like blasted on mushrooms watching these seals just tumble to their death and thinking to myself like everything that we touch is like turns to shit because we're destroying the world, right? There's pollution, there's all sorts of things. And to how we talked about earlier, that there are people who live in these war-torn countries. Well, if you look at some of these countries, like they have entire beaches of clothes, bro, like clothing. And a lot of the clothes that you donate never actually makes it to anybody. They just ship it in containers overseas and they're just dumped somewhere. And all that's pollution, right? Like all that is destroying the ecosystem. And even here in Florida, bro, like I'm gonna be doing an episode here soon about the phosphate industry and how there's a section in Florida that has 6 times higher the rate of cancer than anywhere else in the nation because of the phosphate mining, because the byproduct of phosphate mining is radioactive. And they dump this back into the ground, they cover it up, and then they build housing on top of it, bro. And there's people living there, right? It's called Bone Valley in Florida. You could look it up. And it's like, dude, a cancer just eats away at things and it just makes it worse and worse.
Mhm. No, no
And
consideration for anything else.
no, consider. And here in Florida, I mean, we're seeing it here with the overextension of overdevelopment, and there's a lot of people. And it's going to be like that because obviously you're in a concentrated population, so it seems like that. But if you were to go and take the leap of leaving and going, an hour away out of the city or something like that, it'd be a lot less noticeable. But who can take that leap? You get what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
who can do that? Are you going to drive to work 2 hours every day, to and from work? 2 hour commute to work and then a 2 hour commute back? Probably not, right? Because it's not sustainable,
Now,
right?
unless you're making
Unless,
like buku bucks.
yeah, unless you're making buku bucks, bro, which you're probably not. So you're not gonna do it. You get me? Like,
Yeah.
because I would do the same thing too. I'd go and buy freaking 20 acres somewhere, build a house, and just chill, stay off grid or whatever. But it's not something that is attainable for me at this point in time, right? So yeah, I do see humans as a sort of cancer, and that's what the mushrooms told me. Like, hey, we're destroying everything, we're eating everything up, so we got to cut it out before we wipe ourselves out. And that's any story, like that's any story you really look at of any apocalyptic or dystopian sort of thing where it's like, hey, the humans blew themselves up 5 times over. Like those are stories that have been circulating for a long time. Like that's already in the zeitgeist, that's already in the consciousness of people. It's like, how far will we go? I don't know. Hopefully, I'm not around to see that or my kids. Hopefully that's in the distant, distant future,
Yeah,
not
what do they
anytime
call it? The
soon.
Great Filter. Some civilizations theoretically would just wipe themselves out.
Yeah, an empire falls what every 300 years or something.
Mhm. Again, I think that comes back to like the cancer and just getting lazy. People get bored and they want to fill that with something not that isn't working for a better life. They want the pleasures or just to be able to lie around.
And that's what happened to Atlantis too. That's what they say happened to Atlantis. They're like, well, I think what happened to Atlantis that they were experimenting with like creatures and stuff like that, and that was their downfall. Which kind of is today,
Mhm.
right? Like there's people who want to change the way that they were born and be chimeras. Right? It's like, no, you're a dude and you're a chick, and that's it. But people are literally um, mutilating themselves real time right now, dude,
Yeah.
because they believe a certain thing, which is fine. You can do what you want. I don't think it's a good idea. And a lot of those people end up unaliving themselves in the long run because they figured out that they did the wrong thing, right? Because
Mhm.
once you chop it off, bro, ain't no coming back from that.
Not without further advancements in technologies or something. Um, I did get a collections of some work from Crowley, and one of the ones I tried to get started on reading was the the book of the law, and one of the I think I only got like the first page, but one of the lines says something about that a consciousness can exist within a consciousness. So I wonder if you could apply that to like realities, and that's why it's so dangerous. If you go down a rabbit hole believing a reality exists inside the main reality, things get crossed, and when you face the truth that your reality is false and the greater reality, you either double down or choose to accept it. I think that's a hard pill to swallow for some people.
I mean, look at the Matrix, bro. Like what were these movies like presenting to us, right? And like that's like top of the uh, that's like basic conspiracy of like all these movies are revealing something deeper. But if you think about that, he was in a reality within a reality. And if you've ever read Anton Robert Wilson's work, where it's like, or Robert Anton Wilson's work is reality tunnel. You're in this concept of your own reality, which is fine, right?
Hmm.
But it's like a sort of echo chamber, and if you don't pull yourself out of that, it can be dangerous, and it leads to stuff that we talked about earlier, like the Truman syndrome or the Matrix case defense, right? Things like that, where people will essentially LARP in that world. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Like they'll find a way to like look at any cult, bro. Like any cult. What's that one cult where they all like the what's the one guy that made them all uh drink the Kool-Aid?
Was it
Forget the dude's
Jamestown? At least that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, Jamestown. What's the dude's name?
I'm not
Damn,
sure.
forget the guy's name. Jim Jones, I think it is. James Town. Jim Jones. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure it's Jim Jones. Cult. Yeah, Jonestown. Yeah, the People's Temple Agricultural Project, Jonestown, remote settlement. Jim Jones was the leader. Imagine that, dude, where somebody can get inside your head enough to make you, right, do that to yourself. Religion does that. Some people kill themselves for their religion, right? There's extremists that kill themselves for their religions.
Hmm.
Similar to this, they had a belief, and there's other cults that were like, hey, once we all have to do it at the same time because when this eclipse happens, behind the moon is going to be this spaceship that's going to take us all up, and then we're going to transcend to the next dimension. Bro, what?
I mean,
So,
what were you gonna say?
people's ideas and realities are easily warped, in my opinion. It takes a certain kind of person, but it's easily done, right?
Yeah, not to sound like too crazy, but I had that thought one time. I think it was your podcast. You bring up the Mayans and them disappearing, or the Aztecs. I wonder if you could get a lot of people to ascend. Could that create like a new god or like small g god, some other new entity out there that can mess with the fabric of reality?
Listen, dude, I think anything's game. I think that reality, there is something special to reality. Do I think that we have it figured out? No. And I think that's what a lot of these esoteric and occult groups are trying to do. But that's the conspiracy, bro. Like, is it possible to control reality? Is it possible to talk to angels? Is it possible to talk to demons? Like, what is even a demon or an angel, right? Like, that's a conspiracy. Like, can you control them? Or do they exist? Right? Is heaven real? Is hell real? Like that's the whole conspiracy, bro. But you're not ever really truly gonna know until you pass on, dude. And my dad died 4 times when he had a heart attack, and I asked him like what he saw. Right, that's a near death experience.
Yeah.
Damn, like he was dead, he was gone. Like he flatlined 4 times, right? And I asked him, like, bro, so what'd you see? I didn't see anything. I just woke up here. So when you pass on, is it nothing? And like you just that's it, and and just your memory lives on, or do you truly live on after that? Because some people's near death experiences are crazy, bro. They're like, I saw my entire life flash before my eyes, blah, blah, blah. I saw aliens. I was running towards the light and then I got pulled back. Like, they have some crazy, crazy stories. And my dad's just like, nah, maybe it wasn't his time to go, right? Maybe
Yeah, maybe.
it wasn't his time to go. So he didn't see that stuff. And that explains why he didn't see anything. Or maybe he wasn't religious enough to have a near death experience. Like, I don't know. But I know somebody for a fact who was my dad, who I asked him what it was like. And he said he saw nothing. It was just black.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
wanna if talking a little bit about like manifestation, I wonder if your concept of heaven plays a role in the end. You know, if your idea of peace in heaven is to just no longer exist, I wonder if that's why you see nothing.
yeah, but the way that they've painted it is not that it's not going to be anything. It's like that you're going to live in this golden mansion. You're going to worship God for the rest of eternity. That's what we've been told. I mean, I don't know
Hmm.
what religion you grew up with, but my religion was, hey, once you pass on, you're going to be reunited with God and you're going to worship in heaven with the angels and everybody else for the rest of eternity. That sounds like a pretty real place to me. A lot of these, the Neoplatonists and all these guys that talked about this other reality above from ours, connecting to source and connecting to God, seems like a pretty real place to me, like an actual dimension, if you will,
Hmm.
not just like to me, I've always come to understand like, hey, it's a place I'm going to be able to walk around and interact. You're going to see your dead relatives once again. Like, I'll see you again, right? Like, that's the whole, I'll see you on the other side. Seems like a pretty real concept to me versus like, oh, no, no, it was just like, hey, when you pass on, like that's it. I never understood it like that. I understood it the other way. It's going to be a real reality that I'm going to be able to run around in and fly around, zero gravity or something.
Yeah,
That's what I grew up with.
I think that's the better, how would you say it? The better outcome you could hope for than just being nothing.
Yeah. Well, again, hopefully everyone listening, right, uh, finds their purpose and finds their thing in life and lives a good, happy life and enjoy this reality instead of fantasizing about the next one, right? How I've always said, I'm here for a good time, not a long time, and I'm here to have fun, dude. That's why I research all the things I research because I want to learn more and more. And I'm going to be learning for the rest of my life
Hmm.
because there's no way I'm going to learn everything. You know what I'm saying? So there's plenty of knowledge to go around for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the human experience it really is just waiting around to die. So you gotta fill that time with something. Hopefully, it's something good, not negative.
Yeah, so just be careful with all the homunculus you make and stuff like that and be a good person and just be good. That's what I always tell people. Be good to each other, love each other and try and spread some positivity or something interesting, some form of knowledge or gnosis to people.
Leave the world a better place than you came into it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I think we're probably about an hour in, so I don't know how much more time we have. But my final thought was, we had talked about, creating the Philosopher Stone, and one thing I saw on Reddit while I was kind of looking on the alchemy subreddit, people were recommending books, and somebody had a comment saying the Book of Creators. Some of the information is good because it's citing like the old text, current texts, but it's faulty in the sense that it basically combines the wet and the dry path. So I was wondering your thoughts on that.
My thoughts on that is I believe there are various ways alchemy in its mystical form is tapping into a form of technology. And the same way that an Android phone can make a phone call, similar to how an Apple phone can make a phone call, they're both using the same technology in a different way, right? A different platform, if you will. So I think that when it comes to the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, all these different alchemists had their own paths and they achieved the same thing in the end, just a different way. Because again, it's a form of technology. So if you're able to align XYZ, Doesn't matter if you do it with the wet path or dry path, you're still achieving the end result, which is the Philosopher's Stone, right?
Hmm.
The magnum opus. So I'd be weary to, be like, hey, this is the right one or this is the wrong one. Again, back to what we talked about at the beginning of like, hey, how do you truly know, right? If it is the
Hmm.
right one or the wrong one, you don't. You just got to do it. So, do I think alchemy is real? I don't know. I can't prove it to you. I can just read the stuff that the guys were talking about. Do I think there was a possibility? Yeah, I think there's a possibility for a lot of things, right? Because again, I think that there are aspects of reality we don't fully truly understand, and I don't think. Hopefully, we will one day, but I think alchemy maybe was again another form. It was another form of religion that for those people was real to them doesn't necessarily make it real for me.
Hmm.
You get what I'm saying? So it's like the jury is still out. Like I don't know if homunculus were real. I think it's a super interesting concept, but maybe just maybe they were able to do it once or twice. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a topic I don't know if we'll find the answer to without, somebody actively testing it on camera, turning something to gold.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely.
But one final, well, I don't know about final because I don't know if we're gonna wrap up soon. But I was thinking, you said how the Philosopher's Stone is the Swiss Army knife of the occult. I kind of like to think of it as just it's a Swiss Army knife for humanity in general. Because infinite money glitch, you can heal. Theoretically, it could help expand your psyche, your spiritual aspects.
Yeah, I called the homunculus the utility knife because it
Oh,
it
was it the
does
homunculus?
everything.
I thought it was the Philosopher's
Yeah,
Stone. My bad.
but you need the It's funny because you need the philosopher's stone to create a homunculus. So again, I don't know which is harder. Is it the philosopher's stone or the homunculus? I think that the homunculus would be harder to make, and I think that was the true magnum opus, in my opinion, right? Creating artificial life because you can then create this thing that can you can use it for whatever you want. And it sounds really messed up, but that's what the texts say. Like they were using it for invisibility, for becoming impervious to pain, like just different stuff. So, what a better thing to make than
Yeah.
that, right?
I think
So,
in the book they mentioned you can manipulate life and you can just have like a regular chicken but make it like massive or like talking about like botany if you liquefy it give it to a plant it can make it either like always bloom perfect and keep the fruit like top notch best and stuff. So I
yeah,
think yeah definitely tons of different uses but who knows if it's real.
yeah, I can't tell you if it's real or not. So, the the jury's still out on that one, bro.
Mhm.
I'll let you know when I figure it out.
Same. I think you're a little bit more farther ahead than I am, but yeah, I found a lot of these topics interesting. Coming back to mushrooms, that's another thing I'm becoming a little bit more fascinated with. There was um, Crypto the Corn guys. I've been going through their catalog, and they bring up the mushrooms, their theories about it, and it's a fascinating organism. It
Hmm.
can communicate with itself, and
It's an
like
alien, yeah.
the plants around it swap nutrients between them. There's the organism Bob. That's super crazy. It's like the largest organism on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to them about that. Super, super. They're little aliens, bro. They connect everything and they're everywhere. So maybe that's the Philosopher's Stone. I don't know.
I had heard somebody, I forget his name, but he was a mushroom expert on Rogan saying that he knew, I think he knew, what's the guy that wrote Doom, Herbert? Or is
Hmm.
that somebody else? That
I don't know the
saying
guy's name.
he was saying that he made the connection that instead of talking about the spice, it was mushrooms. The blue liquid they drink,
Hmm.
it's made from mushrooms. So I thought
Yeah,
that was an
Paul
interesting connection.
Stamets. Yeah. Yeah, Paul Stamets. I like his stuff too.
Hmm.
But yeah, I haven't heard that particular one, but again,
Yeah, I
I
think he said it
wouldn't.
on Rogan. I'd have to try and find the whole conversation about the
Yeah.
surrounding that.
Yeah, it's pretty dope.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot about we don't know about this reality. I forget where I heard it, but somebody said it was it's like amoebas trying to understand the petri dish you're actively on. It's something that's just impossible to do.
And again, I don't think that it is impossible, but just the way technology goes and all the knowledge that has been lost even before our time, I think it'll be difficult, you know.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things that we're missing pieces to the puzzle, and we're trying to all, the puzzle's also scattered around. So it's like, what are you supposed to do? I don't know, maybe
Sure. It depends.
go on from there and not disregard history, but kind of create your own. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's why people dive into the occult, the falling of the Tower of Babel, splitting everybody up. We lost a lot of the knowledge,
Hmm.
whether it was a good or bad thing. Definitely a lot of knowledge lost.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. So we'll see what happens, dude. I don't have all the answers, but I'm trying my best.
Same here. I like to pick people's brains and try to see if any connections can be made. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, dude, that's pretty much it, man. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Anytime I could have you. I think we always have good, interesting conversations.
Yeah, for sure, dude. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, take care, man.
You too.